In all your travels around the world, you never brought us back a truck that could play a record.
I've never seen that.
Isn't that right? Isn't that
Not
incredible?
even in Japan.
That's right. Yeah, it's just they've got all those. I think it's from this convention that they had with the Sony people here in town.
Amazing stuff. Yeah, we did a story on silicon chip. We're coming up shortly in California. Much the same sort of technology. For example, a silicon chip that is about the size of, half the size of your small fingernail, that has the equivalent of 22,000 transistors on it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And
It begins to make you wonder where the heck we're really going to end up with all of this technology and all those things. Speaking of overseas, I was surprised to find today that you were actually ABC, Australian Broadcasting Commission's man in New York. For how many years were you there?
I was sent for 3 years, and I stayed for 10.
Was that your choice to stay there? Or was
Very
it
much so, yeah. I went with my wife, and we were supposed to go to London, and that didn't work, and so they said, go off to New York. And she was filled with trepidation about going. And people and friends said, oh, don't worry, look, it'll go very quickly, 3 years will go. Yeah. 10 years went like that. It was just
sure does.
amazing. It's your town, isn't it?
Well, not really. I haven't been back for so long to New York, only on one brief instance, you know, but it really is an exciting place to be. There's always something happening in New York.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it.
Yeah. Well, that was the period of race riots, of Watergate, of 3 America's Cups, a couple of elections. Wonderful period.
So you had a lot to cover, really.
Great.
To do all of it.
Yeah, great.
You're sort of the quiet man of that group of fellas there. I know George is a bit gregarious, Mr. Negus. You know, you always see him hopping in and out of things. And Ian, of course, you see a lot of things about Ian and so forth. But even though, I mean, your reporting is spot on and all the things you do is spot on, but character-wise, you seem to be a bit laid back, a bit more laid back than those fellas are.
Yeah, I guess I am. George enjoys the publicity and does it very well. It's easier, again, I think if you're a single man. I've got a wife I've got to look after,
yes.
And so I've got to be a little more careful. Ian's, I think, in a worse position because, if you like, I'm in a better position too. He's got 2 children, and I just don't know how he manages to look after the wife and the 2 children and do this job.
Do you find it difficult?
I think it is difficult. You've got to work at it. I think I probably spend more time with my wife Diane than the average Australian 36-year-old Australian who works 9 to 5. But you've got to work at it. You've really got to decide that your social life has got to be cut to 0 almost.
What's her reaction to all of this? I mean, you're moving about all the time.
Right.
You're always meeting people, ladies, whatever. I'm not hinting at anything. I mean, you just are. I mean, how does she handle all of that?
I think she handles it pretty well so far. After tonight, you may not. But
oh yes, right.
No. She's well. She was with me in New York, you see, so it was much the same. We used to work. Then we'd do about a 2-week foray out and back from New York to South America or to Canada or whatever. So she understands the lifestyle. She's okay for those first couple of weeks, I guess, and then after that, I feel like I want to come home, and she feels like I should be home. But she handles it pretty well. She'd have to, wouldn't she?
Well, I think so. If someone is away that much, you know, it would be difficult. And also, it takes a lot of understanding, I suppose. And trust, maybe. That's a good word.
That's a good word, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do you look guilty? You know?
I don't know how I'd go on the other side, you see. If I was stuck there and she was going away so much, maybe I wouldn't... I don't think I'd be quite as sanguine as she is.
Yes. That's always the way, too, isn't it? Yeah. When the shoe is on the other foot, you don't have to worry about it, so to speak. You've been described, your interviewing technique as sort of gently inquisitive, but... I read a little bit more behind that, but I mean, do you use that sometimes? I mean, do you try to lull people into maybe not so much a feeling of security, but to a feeling where they can reveal a lot more to you? Is that the style you use? Or?
Yes, it is. I mean, I really think that you'll get much more out of someone with a velvet glove than a sledgehammer. And I think people, if they agree to come on 60 Minutes, then they're prepared to talk. I think they've realised that we aren't going to simply let them off with a 5-minute interview. So they've got something to say, and in a sense, it can be a psychiatrist's couch, if you like, without building it up too much. I think if they've got something to say, there's a certain amount of therapy involved, and I think people will say things to you if they don't believe that you're out there to tip a bucket on them, if they don't believe that you're about to, as I say, take the chainmail fist and hammer them, and I think it works.
Do you get self-conscious about it? Well, I have a piece of film here that I want to show. The reason I ask is because being the gently inquisitive.
I'm going to have to live this down now, you say.
Oh, well, no, I mean, being gently inquisitive, of course, and having to approach people, I mean, it takes a lot of, there's a Jewish word for this, but I don't think I can use it. It takes a lot of nerve to have to approach certain people. We got a piece with Prince Philip here, for example, where you caught him off guard at a ski resort, this was.
Charlie.
Oh, Prince Charles, I'm sorry, Prince Charles, at a ski resort, right?
Right.
Well, I'll just show you the piece and see what we mean here.
Now, where have you all come from?
We're the Australian crew.
Australian? What next?
We're the Australian ones, sir.
Bloody hell.
Now, you see, what happened there was that he'd come out of that restaurant, and the British journalists who cover him all the time, there are rules to cover the royals. So you don't film them or don't take photos of them eating, never smoking. You never saw a photograph of Princess Margaret smoking. Things you do and things you don't do. And with Charlie, it was a case where he was going up skiing, and the other British journalist said, well, we don't go up in the ski lift with him. He's on his own. And we had to get him there because we were then scheduled to go on somewhere else. So we went up in the ski lift with him. And the cameraman, Brendan Ward, was filming away. We were trying to get, there was a shot of him alongside a Marlborough Man poster. And he was standing there. There was the poster, you see. So I said, let's try and get him with the Marlborough Man. This was a guy on a horse. And so Brendan filmed for about 10 seconds and then put his hands down and said, if looks could kill, I'd be dead.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And he didn't like it. And so we explained to his people what was happening. We got to the top, and that's what he spoke to us, not at that time, in the interview, a little later in the program. And he came across and said, and I said, look, we're not here to harass you, we're really here to do a thing on the press. And he said, no, you're not harassing me. It's the other press, I think the British press, who won't stay out of my way. And so, in fact, he gave us an interview. We were there on the spot, whereas the British press afterwards said, well, we don't do that sort of thing. You play by the rules, you don't go across and do these things. We had to do it.
It's interesting about security there. You were allowed to get that close to him, and no one checked you. And there's another thing here which we can show now. This Lady Di piece, you caught her in the street going to her car. Now tell me about this one.
Well, we'd found out where she was. We found out where she was leaving. It was pretty public knowledge, and some of the British journalists told us.
She got rid of you pretty quick, didn't she?
Well, what she said, and excuse the French, I said, we've come from Australia. And she said, Christ, what a long way to come. And then she went, but the red car was a giveaway again. Now, we went there and we stood outside her apartment. And she came along, and it was only when we said we were from Australia that she smiled and got friendly. And we decided the next day, we thought, right, she smiled now. The next day she'll talk to us. And so we went out there the next day, and we were just standing around waiting alongside the car, and we thought, first up, no one had come near us, no police had come near us, no bobbies. Worst of worst, I mean, what would happen if it was an IRA person?
Absolutely, sure, yeah.
She was so vulnerable, and we were also talking about if we wanted to get the attention, not that we'd think of doing it, but what about if a tyre was flat, and she came out and there was the flat tyre, and so she had to have someone to change the tyre, or she had to get it changed, And
you didn't think at any time, of course, of flattening her tyre, did you?
Shame, no.
No.
But she didn't come out. In fact, what she was doing at that stage, unbeknownst to us, was that she was on her way to Australia. So that the odd thing was when we said, we're from Australia, and she said, Christ, what a long way to come. She knew she was going to Australia, no one else knew. And we saw Prince Charles the next day. We went to Switzerland, and we saw him, and that's when, again, he said, where are you from? Australia, bloody hell, Australia. So they both knew what was going on.
They must have thought you were onto something about her coming or something.
We had no idea.
What about the danger with all of this, the reporting that you do? I mean, you put yourself in some pretty precarious positions here sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, I guess it's you've got to tailor it. You've got to trim your sails with danger. You've got a cameraman, you've got a sound man who's got a microphone that looks like a bazooka, you've got a producer, and you've got yourself. And so you just can't go into silly places. I mean, you are conspicuous. The fact there are 4 people, you're conspicuous. But and so you try and tailor it so that the risk is as low as possible.
How close do you get to action? There's a piece here from Israel that they wanted to talk about.
Yeah, that was there was a. Here, what you're seeing is the Israeli guns going off into Lebanon, into southern Lebanon, which we've seen now for 30 years, and the stalls. Life goes on as normal. To us, it was unusual. Here were these big guns going off, blowing heck out of Lebanon, and probably killing people.
What is that?
It's a tourist, an American tourist, who's simply playing with the guns. And
taking pictures. There's real fighting going on down there?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I don't believe that.
It's a strange lifestyle. I mean, I'm buying an ice cream there, you see. It's a stall, almost as though it was Luna Park. And it's a stall, people buy ice cream, and the guns go off, and, and people die in Lebanon. And we went back to the motel that night. It was a motel much like an Aussie motel. And we went back there, and there was someone, the guns were still going off. And so we went by a bunker. And all the children were in the bunker, you see. It was night time, and there was a light outside, much like a public toilet in Australia. You see, there was a light out there. We said, what's that? And they said, that's the bunker. The children are down there. If you hear more of these Katyusha rockets, the Russian rockets coming across into the rather flimsy motel, then wait. They come in a series. And wait until the end of the series. There's a pause. Then grab your pillow, grab your blankets, and run across the road down to the bunker. So we said, right, wait for the series to end. We'll grab the pillow and go. We walked inside to get a drink at the motel, and the woman who ran the place, she said, Katyusha rockets, you know what to do? We said, yeah, I'll tell you what to do. She said, what you do is you go back to your motel room and you open the window. Don't leave the room, she said. You open the windows so there's no concussion, no glass smashes. Take the mirror off the wall, and then go in the bathroom and lie down in the bathroom. Yeah. So we said, right, we've got that. We lie down in the bathroom. We don't run across the road. And the husband came and he said, no, look, don't do that. That's not what you do. He said, what you do, he said, is open the windows. That's right. Take the mirror off the wall, but then get under the bed. So you get out. So I said to Nick Lee, the cameraman, I said, well, you know, I don't know what you're going to do, but should we sleep together in the same room? And he said, no, I think I'll sleep alone. And so I thought, oh, heck, what could I do? So I just went to sleep. It was a very restless sleep, you know, and very fitful sleep. And he had the same. And we got up the next morning and said to the sound man, Peter Frager, we said, you know what, how did you sleep? And he said, oh, terrific, didn't you turn the radio on? I said, no, and there's a radio alongside the bed. And he said, no, when we got back to the room, I turned the radio on and there was an unofficial truce. And so there were no, so he'd slept beautifully.
You ended up in this bunker.
Went from the bathroom, right to the bed.
I get the feeling, Ray, you wouldn't have it any other way. It sounds like it's really an exciting life and something that fulfills you, I suppose.
It's great.
Well,
yeah. It's great.
And it's a great team, too. And I'm not saying it's just because it's our network. It's a highest rating program, I suppose, in Australia, and really doing a great job.
It's a great team behind it. That's the team behind.
Say hello to George and Ian and all the boys for me.
When I see them.
Even say hello to Gerald Stone, if you want. You can do that, too.
Thanks
a lot for coming in.
Pleasure,
Okay.
Don.
Ray Martin for 60 Minutes.